Welcome back to Tiny Travelers, the podcast
Welcome to Tiny Travelers, brought to you by Baby Quip, the family travel podcast where we make traveling with little ones easier, smarter, and more fun.
We talk about
I'm Sarah,
travel,
a travel-loving mom who knows the joys and chaos of exploring with little ones. Each week, we dive into parent-tested strategies, travel hacks, and honest advice on what really works with kids.
Because we all want travel to feel easier.
Grab your travel planner and let's make your next family adventure
Katie
unforgettable.
Cline is a hospitality expert who's worked with some of the most iconic hotel brands in the world, including the Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, and W Hotels, and now brings that same 5-star lens to her own short-term rental properties. She's also the host of the podcast Second Home First, where she helps families think about vacation home ownership in a completely different way. Not just as a luxury, but as a strategy for building wealth and creating meaningful family experiences at the same time. Katie, welcome to Tiny Travelers.
Sarah, thank you for having me. So nice to see you.
So nice to see you. I'm so excited to talk about this because this is something that is so important in traveling with families.
Yeah.
So you've worked at some of the highest levels in hospitality, and now you're also a parent, which gives you some pretty interesting perspective.
Oh, yeah.
What's something that says family friendly, and what does that actually mean?
Becoming a parent, I think, really makes it real, right? You can think about these things from a marketing perspective or from visuals or design, but until you are a parent, you don't really understand it as much in a way. Of course, you know, we try to as aunts and uncles, but now I have 2 little ones. I have a 4-year-old and a newly minted 1-year-old. So I get it. I'm in here with you guys. And I think what's interesting about the term family friendly and how that has evolved within travel and hospitality is back in the day, that really meant kids clubs, kids pools, buffet of fried food that the kids would be interested in and could pick and choose what they wanted, right? Character breakfast, things like that, which in some cases still very much have their place. But I think for a lot of parents, particularly millennial parents, that's not exactly what we want our vacations to look like. And so now you're seeing a really interesting intersection emerge where hotels or short-term rentals or destinations that weren't necessarily branded family friendly are attracting families. And I saw this firsthand when I worked for the brand W Hotels. W Hotels is a brand that was started in 1998. It was really about what if we just painted the walls black and turned the music up and the lights down, and almost it became a nightclub in a way, but it was also a hotel, really that beginning of boutique hotels. And as consumer demand grew for that, the price point went up, which meant the brand had to evolve and become into this luxury player that it is today. And so a lot of people who love the W brand, who grew up in their 20s and early 30s staying at W Hotels, as they got married, had children, they still wanted to continue staying at W Hotels, but they just have these little tiny travelers with them now too. So we're seeing that evolution of it doesn't necessarily have to be kids branded and kids clubs and all those things in your face in order for it to be a great place to go and stay as a family.
Yes. And I love that you say that because I often travel with my family, but I don't want it to always feel like kiddie,
yeah.
Too childlike, because I'm also a person and I also like certain things. And so it can be sophisticated and it can also have family friendly aspects, and you don't have to necessarily choose one or the other.
And you're spending your time, your money there as much as the kids, it's their time. And of course, we want our kids to have fun. That's going to make our experience that much better. But there's a tipping point, right? Of I want it to feel like a place I want to go, a place I want to stay, food I want to eat, as well as watching my children enjoy the experience too.
Exactly. So I think, like we've been talking about, where you stay can make or break a trip with your kids. Yeah. What should parents prioritize when they're looking at accommodations?
I think it's thinking about the stage that you're in. So I've worked for some of the best hotels in the world. I now own 3 short-term rentals. I think there's a case for both of them. I don't think there's a world where I'm like only staying at hotels or only staying at short-term rentals, but it really comes back to what is my trip about. So right now with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, a lot of times I am prioritizing vacation rentals because that means, number one, we have separate bedrooms. So when they go to bed at 8 o'clock, I don't have to go to bed at that same time too. Number 2, they typically have kitchens. I can prepare some meals or that endless parade of snacks that seems to be happening always. I can store milk and bottles and things like that.
A place to store your applesauce pouches.
Where are the pouches going to go? We need a spot for that. And you can get that in hotels, but by and large, you're either looking at like an extended stay product or you're looking at a suite, which could be more expensive. So I think it's really that, like knowing where you are. When it was only my daughter and when she was, 1 or 2 months old, actually, in a lot of ways, a hotel could serve that purpose better because if they had a pack and play, I didn't mind if she was sleeping in the same room as me because I was, crazy first-time parent wanting to make sure she was breathing at all times. And it was nice to be able to call downstairs and order room service or, say to my husband, you're going to watch her for an hour and I'm going to go downstairs to the spa and get a massage. So again, it's really like, what is that purpose of the trip? And then therefore, how can you choose an accommodation type that's going to support it and even elevate it as opposed to hinder what you actually need in the day-to-day.
I love that. So when we're thinking about these short-term rental properties that a lot of families kind of want to choose, what makes a property really work for families with young kids?
Yeah, I think being a parent myself has been very helpful in how I set up my properties because I know the things that are kind of irksome or helpful. When we first started setting up our very first property, we were driving upstate from New York City to near Lake George for about 3.5 hours each way every single weekend for about 3 or 4 months with a 1-year-old in tow. So we were going back and forth a lot for all the work that we were doing on the property. And we realized very quickly, like, I don't want to pack the pack and play every single time. I don't want to put the high chair in the car every single time. So we bought ones to stay at the house. And very quickly we're like, I bet there's other families like us who think that too. Another thing is I don't love the very thin pack and play mattress. So we bought a little mattress that went on top of that. And to me, I have to believe that if you are a parent and you show up to the house and I have that pack and play set up for you, so you don't have to be digging around in all my closets to try and figure out where it is and rushing before nap time to hopefully make it in time. And you see that I have this mattress. It's that one extra little step that says she gets it. And she's a mom too, and her baby sleeps here, and therefore it's probably going to be good enough for your baby too. Another thing I think about is what type of recommendations am I giving my guests? So if I have a group that tells me we're coming to celebrate my friend's bachelorette party, and I have another group that says it's our first trip with our 1-year-old and the grandparents are coming too, the place that I'm telling them to go to dinner should probably be different. Or what I'm telling them that the area has to offer should really be tailored to them. So using my own personal experience to say, hey, the park down the road was just recently renovated, or go check out this water park or this drive-in movie theater, that's really helpful too. And such a green flag to my guests of like, she's a mom and she gets it as well.
Exactly. And sometimes all you need is just another person who gets it, who gets your crazy brain or gets kind of the stage that you're in or whatever. You only need one person. And you've got it covered. So you've seen what world-class hospitality looks like, and you're applying that to your own 3 rental properties. What have you learned from luxury hospitality that families can actually use?
Let me think about that for a second. I think a lot of times it's the little things. So if I think about some of the best hotels that I've visited, that I've stayed in, that I've had the opportunity to work with, it is that check-in experience that sets the tone. And I actually think about this check-in experience a lot with my own properties now. When I was working for Le Méridien, we did a study that found the first 10 minutes sets the tone for the entire guest stay. And if you think about your own travel experience, it's so true, right? Like those first 10 minutes are going to make or break. You're usually in a really vulnerable position, particularly when you're arriving to a vacation rental, because there's always that question of like, is this place going to look like the pictures? Is the host going to be accessible? All those little things. So those first 10 minutes are super important. And on one of my other podcasts, Sweet Success, I interviewed this gentleman called Rory Sutherland, and he is a behavioral scientist. He is a behavioral psychologist. He is a New York Times bestselling author. He's a TEDx speaker. He's an incredible person. And he talked about something that we as humans have, which is called confirmation bias. And I think that really supports the first 10 minutes rule, because essentially what he's saying is whatever you decided in those first 10 minutes, you're going to spend the rest of your stay finding supporting details for that. So if you had a bad arrival experience, every little fleck of dust that you see, every time your host doesn't respond to you immediately, you're going to think, see, I knew this place wasn't great. Right? So for me as a host, I'm thinking like, did I give people good enough directions, or did they drive past my house 5 times before they found it? If they're arriving at night, does the light come on? Does it stay on long enough to get the baby out of the car? When they want to get into the house, did I give them a personalized key code, or are they digging around for a physical key? When they open the door, if it's the summertime, have I already cooled the house down for them? If it's the winter, is it already warm when they walk in? Of course, is it clean? That's like crucial, right? So I think taking that first 10 minutes principle into what we are trying to do now is really important to make sure that immediately as parents, our shoulders come down, we exhale, we go, okay, this is going to be great. We're going to have a great time, because as a mom, we have like that to-do list running in the back of our head constantly of like, cool, now this is fine. All right, she's got to eat and it's 10 minutes till nap. And what are we going to do about X, Y, and Z? Let's take one thing off their plate, which is a great arrival experience.
Yes. And so this podcast is brought to you by Baby Quip. And something that I also love about Baby Quip and our quality providers is they really do take that first 10 minutes into consideration. They love to go and pre-set up your crib and nap setup. So you come off the plane, you're running late. Let's try to make it for nap. Crib's already there. They set up these amazing toys and fun things to play with. So as the parent are checking in, kids are taken care of because they've got the toys and they've got it all ready, or the high chair is already set up. So you all can get ready and have a snack and be safe and sound. It is really like those little details that make or break your stay.
I am such a huge fan of Baby Quip. I had an experience after Christmas this year. We were going to Key West. It was my son's very first plane ride. We were traveling with 2 kids on a plane for the first time. So again, that mental checklist going on in the back of my head. And we had a good flight. He behaved well. We were like, okay, great. Here we are. It's great. We're in the sunshine now. We got out of snowy New York. Like, let's do this. Our plane, I think, was super delayed, but we landed and we're like, okay, we've got there. And then what happens? We sat on the tarmac for an hour and a half being told there was no gate available as we looked out the plane window and saw 4 open gates. So
and you just start sweating. You're like,
sweating. All of a sudden now I'm thinking, do we have enough formula? Like, are they going to be okay? What if I need to diaper change? All these things of like, I prepared for a certain amount of time, and now this is really throwing a kink in the plans. And there's other things too. I had already ordered an Instacart order. I'm messaging the guy asking if he can deliver it without me there. That was a whole kerfluffle. He was finally able to do it, but he had to return the alcohol part of our order, which is disappointing, but understandable.
The first 10 minutes when you arrive.
First 10 minutes, I would love that little glass of rosé, but that's okay. That's okay.
We'll make it through.
Exactly. And the first text that I landed to when all of that was going on was my quality provider from BabyQuip. This was my first time ever using BabyQuip, saying, I reached out to your management company. I've already set everything up. It is all there for you. So it was just like, again, that exhale moment of, okay, everything else is going wrong here, but at least I know that that's going to be okay. And then after we finally got off the plane, we went to the rental car counter, and I just knew this was going to happen. I had pre-booked a car seat with our car, and I booked directly through that company to make sure that it was going to be there. And of course, what did they say? Oh, actually, we don't have a car seat. We can give your 3-year-old a booster seat. Which I'm like, okay, no, right? I luckily had my quality provider's phone number from her texting me to let me know. And I said, hey, any chance you have a car seat that I'd be able to add to the order? And in my head, I'm thinking, all right, I guess like I'll drive to the hotel, which is like 40 minutes away with her in the booster. I don't love it, but I'll deal with it. And then tomorrow, maybe she can drop off the car seat. The quality provider was like, not only do I have it, I can leave it on my porch for you because I'm 10 minutes from the airport. You can swing by, pick it up, get her in the car seat right away. I'll just add it to your order. And then I'll just pick it up when I pick up the rest of the stuff. I mean, talk about feeling taken care of when us as moms are always the ones taking care of everybody else. And right away, I was like, I am a fan for life. Thank you so much.
Yes. You know what? I mean, all of our quality providers, they're moms, they're grandparents, they're people who have been there. And so they're like, I get it. Let me take something off your plate. No, I want to switch gears and think about second home first. And this idea is really interesting because it kind of flips the way people think about maybe home ownership or ownership. So what does second home first actually mean?
So to back up for a second, my husband and I had been living in the UK for about 6 years. We were living in London, super happy there, loved living there. And unfortunately, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when she was 59 years old. So as her disease started to progress, I had this moment of like, I need to be home. I need to be closer to her. I need to be here to help with her care. And we decided to move back to the US. At that time, my daughter was about 10 months old. We were moving back to New York City. New York City is, of course, quite an expensive place to live. So there was that question of like, could we even afford to buy a primary home here? But even separate to that, it was also like, do we want to be here long term? Are we going to like living here as parents? The last time we lived here, we did not have children. So all of those big questions. So we decided to do something a little unconventional, and we bought our second home first. We bought this property about 3.5 hours north in an area called Lake George. It's a place that we had been visiting a lot. We had gone camping there every summer when we were living in the US and just absolutely loved it there. And of course, inevitably, every camping trip when I was like cold and missing modern conveniences like indoor plumbing and hot water, I would think to myself, like, wouldn't it be nice to own a house here someday? So we bought that property for much less money than a property in New York City would cost us. And I had thought, you know, with my hospitality background, maybe if we put it on Airbnb and Vrbo, maybe we'll be able to offset some of our costs. Very quickly, what I saw, not only were we covering all of our costs, but we were actually profiting off of that. And it was such a light bulb moment for me because I think we're all told that there's kind of one way to do things. You know, it's get good grades, go to a good college, you know, meet the person you're going to marry, get married, have children, like this very prescriptive life. And some of that doesn't work anymore. If you look at the numbers, I mean, renting is now more affordable than buying in all 50 of the largest US metros. So doing something unconventional like this is really interesting when we think about how do we build wealth for the future? How do we build equity and own an appreciating asset? And all the things that traditionally your primary home was meant to do for those of us who are priced out of primary homes. But how do we build this long-term wealth in a way that we can enjoy it now? Because what I saw with my mom is, unfortunately, we don't get those golden years. They're not guaranteed, right? And anything can happen. The only thing that's guaranteed is right here, right now. And also, as yourself and probably a lot of your listeners, viewers would know as parents, like each of these stages with our kids are so magical. So why should I be saying like, oh, like forget your 4-year-old year, like when you're 7, then we're going to have some fun, or like, when I'm retired, then I'll pay attention a bit more. No. So it's really completely opened my world. In the last 3 years, we bought that property. We've bought 2 more properties. We still rent our primary home here in New York City. And it's just this like long-term wealth building strategy with now near-term enjoyment built in. So I launched the podcast. I have a newsletter. I have a course as well, because I'm hearing from a lot of people, particularly millennials, parents who live in high cost of living cities, where they're like, I don't know that I want to be on the hook for a $10,000 a month mortgage for, by the way, a 2-bedroom, 700 square foot apartment, when I could keep renting for $4,000, buy my second home first, and essentially have a place to vacation for free and build those family memories with my children.
I love that, because, like you said, you don't have to go down a traditional path. You don't have to do the things the way that other people are doing them. You can have a side hustle. You can have 17 side hustles. You can have side homes, like, exactly. All of that. So what families do you think could consider this as a strategy for them?
I'm hearing it a lot. I mean, of course, I live in New York City, so I hear it from a lot of New Yorkers, but I think this sentiment is true nationwide, where it's like people who are questioning that prescriptive track, people who want more freedom, more optionality. A lot of people I talk to could afford to buy the $2 million 2-bedroom apartment, but they're saying to themselves, like, do I want to do that? And I know for me personally, COVID was such a wake-up call, because I've always been a type A, high-achieving person who thought, as long as I work hard, I'm always going to get the next job and the bigger job and the bigger salary raise, and nothing can stop me. And then COVID happened, and we were living in the UK. I was working in the travel industry. In some ways, I was very fortunate because I worked in communications. So I was the one doing all of the comms around hotels closing, hotels becoming hospitals, hotels housing key workers. So I was more fortunate than others in my industry to be able to continue to work during that time. But I watched all of a sudden my huge, globally important industry that travel is come to a halt. And I made 3 budgets at that time. One of what would happen if I lost my job, one of what would happen if my husband lost his job, and then a third budget of what would happen if we both lost our jobs, and how quickly would we need to essentially move back to the US and like move in with one of our parents or something. So that was such a wake-up call to me, in the sense of going away from that traditional life of just trusting that my W-2 job is going to take care of everything, starting to have these properties. And a lot of people that I talk to have no interest in leaving their job, nor do they need to. But the beauty of having this property is it gives you options, and it can start building. You have income, you have equity, you have this little, like you said, side hustle happening. That I always said to my husband, my goal is to get to a point that one day, if we were to suffer a job loss, our first thought would be, that's such a shame. I really liked that job, as opposed to, how are we going to feed our children tomorrow?
Right. I think that's so amazing. What do you think the biggest misconceptions about owning a vacation property would be?
I think when people hear the phrase second home, myself included, until I went down this path 3 years ago, you think of rich people and you think it's only for wealthy people. And again, it goes back to the way that things had always been done, of like, you need to afford the starter home, and then you get the bigger home. And then if you're successful enough, then you can get the second home, which sits empty and collects dust while you're not there. And then you arrive to it like in Succession, when he like sends his people and they clear the dead raccoon out of the fireplace. Like that was like what I thought of as second homes. And I remember I grew up on Long Island in a town called Hicksville, literally called Hicksville. And I remember like it wasn't a very wealthy town. So when we heard of people being like, oh yeah, my parents have a house on that lake, like you would roll your eyes and you would think like, must be nice, right? Mm-hmm. And I think with this approach, with this strategy, it shows that there's like a democratization happening here. And someone who doesn't necessarily consider themselves rich or wealthy can actually use this to build their wealth, as opposed to it being the cherry on the top of the cake that you get when you've made it already.
Right. Okay. I honestly love that. And truly, I think that might have been a misconception that I've had, is that, okay, we got to get rich first in order to do X, Y, Z, but that's not true. I mean, we've been talking this whole time about taking a different path, going a different route, seeing what life brings you. Maybe, getting a second home first is for you. Before we wrap up, what do you think traveling with kids has taught you about being a mom, about your life and stage right now?
I think life and stage that you just mentioned is really spot on. I am someone who was a super avid traveler. At the end of every year, I would do this kind of like year wrap up post on my Instagram. And the first thing I would start with was how many flight miles did I take that year? Like that's how avid of a traveler I am and was. And in this stage of my life, you can imagine that number is pretty paltry every year. And I think that's okay, right? Like there's different seasons and phases depending on what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that like that version of Katie is gone. She is here in a different way. So we do a ton of car journeys, or we pick our destinations based on where is there a direct flight, where are we maybe not changing time zones right now, and then already starting to think ahead. Like we're saying, okay, maybe in 2 years when my youngest is around 3, maybe that's when we're going to start going back to Europe and doing these longer trips and everything as well. So I think it's like, as much as I'm type A, I'm very good at rolling with the punches, and especially knowing that like I cannot control these little humans. They're in charge. I am here as co-pilot to just make sure, everyone stays alive mostly, but rolling with it, dealing with it, and also thinking about the fact that they're always watching me. And so the way I am reacting is potentially how they're going to react to things in the future. So if I can show like, it's no big deal that we're sitting on the tarmac for an hour and a half, even though surely someone should have known this plane was arriving here, hopefully that will help them to be a bit more adaptable humans in the future as well.
I really love that, because it's not really about where you travel to. It's about what they're seeing and hearing and experiencing. Yes. Seeing you, hear, experience, regulating, all that kind of stuff.
My daughter, who's just turned 4 recently, she's been doing this thing lately as we walk through the neighborhood, because we're New Yorkers, we walk all the time. She will look at restaurants or shops and go, Mommy, we haven't been there yet. We should go there. And to me, I love that, because that shows that curiosity. That's also very much how I am, of like, ooh, let's try all the new things and let's notice all these things around us too. You don't have to leave the neighborhood to travel sometimes. I felt that during COVID when we were locked down in London, we couldn't really go anywhere. I would go to a different grocery store every few days and I would explore through that way and try new recipes. And like, you can figure out ways that suit the time and the stage of the life that you're in that feel enjoyable, because the worst thing I could do right now is say, we're going to the Philippines. We're doing an 18-hour direct flight. I forget about time zones. Something I used to say, oh, jet lag is just a state of mind. All those things that are very easy to say in your 20s. Right. If I did that with my 2 children, that trip would not be fun, because I'm not setting us up for success at this stage. But you know what? 5-10 years or so, we probably will do that trip together.
Maybe pretty soon. Who knows? Katie, this has been such a practical and thoughtful conversation. I've really appreciated it. Where can listeners find you and learn more about what you're building?
On Instagram, I'm at by Katie Cline, and that's Katie with a K, Cline with a C, like Patsy, just to be extra confusing. And my Instagram for Second Home First is Buy Your Second Home First, BUY, and the website is the same, buyyoursecondhomefirst.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And if this episode helped you think a little differently about where you stay, how you travel, or even what's possible for your family long term, share it with a friend who might be in that same stage of life. Make sure to subscribe to Tiny Travelers for more conversations about family travel and navigating life with kids. Until next time, safe travels wherever life with kids takes you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tiny Travelers. I hope today's episode gave you the inspiration and practical tips to make your next family adventure easier, stress-free, and more fun. If you loved today's episode, head over to the show notes for promo codes and exclusive resources to help you plan unforgettable trips with your little ones. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Happy travels, and I'll see you next time.